All right, so guys, thank you for joining us today. So, over the last 18 months, ever since COVID started, we haven't had an opportunity to meet in person. Our goal going into 2022 was to start having some hybrid events where, if you felt comfortable, we would all meet in our normal meeting place, which is WeWork Legacy North, which is over there right next to the Capitol Grill, right there off the northeast corner of Legacy and the toll road, right? Really nice auditorium. So, hopefully going forward, we can start meeting there. So a hybrid event, like I said, it's going to be meeting in person, or if you can't either get there because of traffic, because DFW is huge, or you're just not comfortable yet, which is totally cool, then, we would have the opportunity for you guys to interact via Zoom. Unfortunately, because of the weather today, the committee, my other committee members and I decided that, hey, let's just play it safe. Because I know Tim's coming from north of McKinney. Jared, I'm not too sure where you're located, but we didn't want individuals to be driving post-meeting, in the rain with potentially icy conditions. So I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you guys got the email earlier today. If you didn't get the email and you're at WeWork right now and you're mad, sorry, I'll buy you a beer or something.
Yeah, beer's on us next time.
Yeah, and so sorry about that. Okay, so welcome to this is the beginning of our 4th year. We started this user group 3 years ago. It was actually, someone had it before us, but no one was, it wasn't active. So 3 years ago, I reached out to Tableau and asked them if I could start this user group up again. And they said, yeah, go for it. And then realized it was a ton of work. And through the user group, I met Tim, and Tim has a lot to offer. A lot of my weaknesses when it comes to data visualization are his strengths. So year 2, he jumped on board and started helping me with the user group. And then the last year or 2, we got Brandy, and then we got most recently Jared in the last 3 or 4 months. So we are going to be your North Texas Tableau User Group Committee. Please reach out to us via LinkedIn. And if you haven't already, that takes me to the next slide. Tableau Public, love it. I should have already been here. So yeah, so you can join our user group here. If you go to LinkedIn and you type the real North Texas Tableau User Group, funny story. You guys always hear me say this if you're a repeater. Somebody already had a real North Texas Tableau user group. And so I had to add they were just sitting on it. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at NTXTUG. I have social media accounts. I never post anything unless I'm on a trip. My goal this year, and I hope you guys keep me to it, especially, Tim, Brandon, and Jared, is to actually tweet more. On Twitter. So hopefully we'll get this a little bit more activity on this North Texas Tug. But again, like I said, this is our team for 2022. I'm Joey Ramos. We have Tim Cady, who's with JP Morgan Chase. We have Brandy Locker, who's with Keyrus. And we have Jared Flores, who's with Brinks Home.
I just want to real quick, Joey, piggyback on the social media aspects. Right, so with the LinkedIn, that's where we're going to be sharing a lot of our invites, right? So if you're not getting our emails, or you want to make sure not to miss one of our events, we'll be sharing all of our events on LinkedIn for sure. So that's the best place to go to if you want to join us in the future. The Twitters, we're not as active as we used to be or once were, but really why we're on there is to kind of share some of our favorite work from around the Tableau space, the data viz space, share other group events, if there's other events you might be interested in virtually. So that's kind of how we use both of those spaces. LinkedIn for our events, and Twitter for sharing content and ideas and things like that.
Well said. Okay. So another thing, we are out on Tableau Public. If you just go to Tableau Public and you search North Texas TUG or North Texas Tableau User Group, you can actually go out there and see. What we'll do is we always publish our majority of our meeting, our workbooks that we use for the meetings. So feel free to go out there and follow us, or you can just go out there and search us, and you can get the old workbooks from the previous meetings. All right, so for this month's agenda, what I will be presenting here shortly is 2021 features, right? 0.4 features. So last year we went over, so every quarter, you know, Tableau releases a new version of Tableau desktop. And what we like to do is go in there and discuss some of the newer features and demonstrate those for you guys. So I'll be handling that for 21.4. Next, Jared Flores will be presenting Tableau Prep. And it's a good thing. I don't have a lot of experience with Tableau Prep, but from what I've learned and just by talking with Jared and seeing some of his demonstrations, he's a pro. So it's good to get, I know I'm going to learn something new every time he presents something Tableau Prep related. Next, and with every meeting, our goal is for you guys to walk away learning something new, right? And tip of the month to me is one of the best portions of our meetings each month. And this month, Tim will be demoing some of his favorite efficiency tips and tricks for Tableau Desktop. So looking forward to that. I don't even know what he's presenting, so I'm looking forward to it. And then at the very end, we'll do a meeting wrap up. So if you guys have any questions and answers, feel free to speak up then. Also, one of the biggest parts of the meeting wrap up is if your organization is looking for a Tableau developer, whether it be Tableau Desktop or Tableau Server Admin or Alteryx or anything data related, data engineers, please feel free to make that announcement then. If you are open to looking for a new opportunity, please just raise your hand and say, hey guys, I'm open for a new opportunity. If your organization is hiring, please reach out to me. And unfortunately, today we'll have to do it virtually, but after each meeting, the cool thing about WeWork is right below WeWork, there are some really cool bars there. And like I said, there's a Capitol Grill. So going forward, if we do get a chance to meet in person, hopefully in March we do, then we can go downstairs and have a beer. All right. Okay, so this workbook, like I said last year, here's some of the 2021.1 features. We only cover a handful of these, right? We don't cover every single one of them. And then, we can go through, we went over 21.2 and then 21.3, and here we are at 21.4. 21.4, a lot of features, right? So you see things that are data management related, Tableau catalog, prep builder, Tableau mobile over here at the bottom right, data at the top right, analytics. So what we'll do is we'll cover probably about 3 or 4 of these each quarter for the new releases, some of the goodies that we think you guys could really benefit from. Which takes us on to the one that I'm most excited about is now on the Tableau server or Tableau online, you can actually edit a published data source. All right, so what does that mean, right? So if I have a workbook here and I will create a new page, and let me move this out of the way. I would create a new page, and you see this here. If I publish this to the Tableau server, actually, let me go grab one. I will open a workbook. Not open a workbook. My newbie. New data source. Tableau server. Cannot connect. Okay, well, I learned something new there too. Okay, let's act like this is I can publish this to the Tableau server, right? So let's do that. So one thing, let's act like this is a Tableau published data source, right? If I have a if I wanted to actually ever go edit that, I would actually have to download a copy of that published data source. And then I could go in and I could actually then start making some edits. And then I would have to actually republish it, right? There's some disadvantage to doing that. For instance, if I have a published data source and I go ahead and download a copy of it, and now it looks like this, and I go in and I try to revise any of my calculations, it's actually going to make me, instead of saying edit, it'll say edit copy, right? So, and I do this all the time. People will come to me and they'll say, hey, I want you to go change this calculation, or you know, we're going to make a revision to it, or we're going to add something to a category, right? So let's say I even have a calculation up here that's just a dimension, and they're saying, hey, for customer name, I want you to go ahead and add this to a new bucket, right? Hey, we have a new customer, we're going to add it to this new category. I would have to edit a copy of this, and then I would have to then actually replace the old dimension with the new dimension, and then I could republish it. It's just a lot of work, right? Well, now what you can actually do, and I can sit here and show y'all, is this is a developer site here for Tableau, right? And this is a published data source to the Tableau server. It's actually the same data source I'm working with, but for some reason I can't connect to it. What you're going to notice now is there's actual button here that says edit data source, right? And so like I just probably poorly explained to you, what's going on here? Okay. Live demos. Let's go to sample. Let's try this one. All right, so different data source, same data source, just different project, and one's a live connection. I can actually go in here and I can edit this data source. Right, so here you'll see all my calculations. Oh. So the first thing it does, okay, so a couple of things, taking a step back. What it's going to do here is, if you notice, this data view pane, data source pane, looks pretty identical to what you're going to see in Tableau desktop, right? If I was to come here and edit this data source, I don't know why it's doing that. Okay.
You might just want to connect to your repository file for Superstore. That might make it easier.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
If you want to go through that pane.
I don't even know where that is on this computer.
The data, yeah, right. To the top there, data sources, and it should be in there.
This one. Thought that's what that was, but whatever. So you'll notice, so this is on my Tableau desktop, right? This is the data source editor. Some people call it the data source pane. This now is actually the server portions, actually version's going to look exactly the same, right? You can go ahead and you can say, hey, I want to remove this, or I want to add something in here. So you can actually change your joins here, or these are noodles, right? But you can actually change which data sources are actually here. You can also change it from a live to an extract. So it's basically the same exact features. You can come down here, you can change the actual characteristics of the data. You can add data source filters. And then once you're done making changes here, you can actually go to a scratch pad. And then on the scratch pad, you can use the scratch pad to edit and test the changes you made with your connections. Let's say you don't even make any changes to your connections, but you want to come in here and you want to edit a calculation, right? Like I said in the past, you had to download this into Tableau desktop, create a local copy, and then come in and edit the data source, but it always said edit copy, and then you'd have to create a copy of it, edit that, and then replace the old one with the new one. Just a lot of steps. Well, now you can actually come in here, you can edit it. And so I can come in here, I can click OK. Now that I've made that change, I can come in here and I can test it however I want to test it. Let's clear it. And then I can come up here and publish it. So 21.4, to me, one of the coolest new features is the ability to edit a data source actually on the server without having to download it and do it in your desktop.
And Joey, quick question. The editing of the connections, right? So the data pane that you showed before, that's new as well, right? Not just the edit calculations, but editing this portion of the connection is new.
Yeah, the whole editing the data source on the Tableau server, I believe, is new.
Got it.
Yeah, this feature is, I'm telling you, one of my biggest, it's just say, can you go, fix this published data source? It's just the power drain because you have to go download it in the desktop and go through all the different steps I was saying. But now, if you have access, right, it's all about, do you have access to even edit this data source in the first place? But if you do, you can come in here and just edit the data source.
Kind of reiterate that pane a little bit, right? So you'd have to download the source as probably like an Excel or CSV, make your change, republish, then reconnect all your workbooks to that new source, right? That's an aspect maybe you didn't touch on, or maybe I missed it, but there's right, a step after you get it published where then you have to reconnect, and then it's probably going to change some of your colors and some of the things you have mapped, maybe even custom shapes, things like that you'll have to go and redo. So this is huge, right? This editing the data source piece.
Yeah, anytime you edit a published data source, it's a pain in the neck. But yeah, now that you can do it here's very cool.
Yeah. One caveat with that would be for Tableau Online users, if the data source is connected with Tableau Bridge, then you can't edit it. Now, one thing that you still get the added bonus to, though, is for any data sources that are using custom SQL, even if it's connected via Bridge, you can still see the SQL query on the online site now, or the server, rather than still having to go in and download it just to see what the queries has in it.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate you bringing that up here. All right, so again, notice the data source view is exactly the same as desktop. You can edit your data connection, you can edit the data model, you can add data source filters, you can come down here and change the metadata. So yeah, you can now edit published data sources on the server, and then go ahead and publish it here. Again, you can use the scratch pad to update calculations. You can actually edit existing calculations, which is nice. So yeah, so really excited about this new feature. Unfortunately, I do not have access to 21.4 server yet, but so my life's still going to be a little more difficult, but hopefully soon. All right, so another cool feature of 21.4 that sort of always just been a pain in the butt, especially if you use a lot of text boxes or if you use a lot of buttons, is the fact now that you can copy and paste, right? So basically, just like you would do in Excel or in PowerPoint, you can highlight an object, press Control C, and then you can actually Control P it, right? Paste it back. I noticed here, it says you can easily copy and duplicate images, text boxes, and web page containers. One thing that they didn't mention here that's for me one of the biggest things are navigation buttons, right? Because I use a lot of navigation buttons, and it's a big pain in the butt to have to recreate that and reformat it every time. Now I can just copy and paste it, and anytime you can use a shortcut, it saves you time, and you're a little bit more efficient. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and demonstrate that real quick on my desktop. So here we go. We have a text box, got some buttons up here. We got a really cool picture image of some NFTs here. I think Jimmy Fallon owns the one in the middle and paid like 100, 200 grand for it. crazy. We got to get in the NFT business or something like that. So basically this text box here, let's say it's formatted and I've got all my fonts formatted, color formatted. I can just copy, paste it. It automatically floats it. I can grab it, hold down shift. I can put it back in here. Then I can just change the text, type in something new. And just like that, I just copy and pasted something that was already formatted, right? It'll save you a little time. Happy about that one. What I like to say about for buttons, right? So what I used to have to do is, let's say I forgot to put buttons on any of these, and as I copied them over and changed the material, changed my views on my dashboard, I'd have to go in here and I'd have to click on navigation, come in here, double click where I want to navigate it to, change the image, go choose an image. You know, if I had a tooltip here, click to go back. In the past, I'd have to go recreate this for every single dashboard. Well, now I can just control it and go to my next page and paste it. And then I can say, okay, hold down shift. I want it right in there. And there it is. So again, copying, pasting, definitely it's going to save you some time. You can do the same thing with images. Copy, paste it, maybe go choose a different image, but definitely something that will save you a lot of time.
Hey, Joey,
Yes.
if you have a container full of text boxes or images, will it let you do it with the whole container at once?
Yeah, so great question. Was that David?
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Great question. Yes. So I actually noticed I made an error with my navigation buttons on one of these dashboards down here. And what I did was actually I selected this whole horizontal container, and then I can just Control C it. And then I can go to the next one, and it will actually take everything that's in that container.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yes, it is. And, you know, it just saves you a lot of time, because a lot of things, I always come in here and tinker with my paddings, and just to do that for every single navigation button on here every time would be a pain in the butt. Now I can just come in here and just copy the whole container and then just change where I want to navigate to. So if you guys have access to 21.4 or something newer, I hope you guys can utilize copy and paste. Any more
Hey,
questions?
Joey.
Yes.
Yeah, you actually, this is kind of not in the script, but you went over a pretty cool tip there that I think would be interesting to kind of reiterate, going from a floating object to tiling it without having to, do the drop down selection and all that.
Oh yeah, so let's say that this is floating, right? This is floating. If I just hover over where I want to drop it and hold down shift, you see how it highlights right there between those two text boxes? I could drop it. Or let's do that over. I can, let's say I want it in this horizontal container up here. I can hold down shift and then hover it around, and then hopefully I get it right perfectly between that blank text box and this other navigation button, and then just release the click button, and then it's there.
That one's awesome. That'll save a lot of frustration.
What were you doing before? You had to come in here and
Yeah, if you like deselect floating, it's just going to throw it wherever it wants, and then you've got to,
drag it.
yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes it kind of makes your stuff a little wonky. So that's an awesome trick. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and stay. Actually, we'll go back to the server. So next, what we'll talk about.
Was a quick question in the
Mhm.
chat from Kimberly.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if any of us can speak to this, but it's how similar this is. This similar to how layouts can be done quickly in Figma. I personally don't use Figma much, if at all. Joey, Jared, Brandy, do you guys use Figma?
So
I
Kimberly,
use
I
Figma,
think,
but
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
no, I was just gonna say I use it, but I don't really use the like the components or the layouts or anything. But so I don't know how similar it is.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly, because I think there's kind of quite a few ways you could do that in Figma, whether you're just doing Control D to kind of replicate the same object or objects, or Control C and Control V, or yeah, some of the more in-house components. So yeah, I don't know if we're probably not even answering the question right, but feel free to unmute yourself if you want to clarify, and we can chat through it some more. I do use Figma, so I'm actually pretty curious what you're talking about.
Yeah,
If you don't want to, that's fine.
I just heard him talking about, selecting multiple items and being able to copy them at the same time and not having to reformat. And that's what I use Figma for. And I was just wondering if anybody used both and saw time savings in one or the other. Thanks.
Oh yeah, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I think the fact that you can do multiple items at one time, definitely, like you're saying, a great time saver that can be used in a similar way, for sure.
Yeah, I don't use Figma. I just do all of my whiteboarding and everything straight in Tableau. So sorry, I can't speak to that.
I will say, just on the Figma topic before we kind of move on, shout out to our friends in Boston. They have a user group meeting Friday, and it's almost exclusively focused on Figma. So if that's a topic you're interested in, check out the Boston Tug this coming Friday the 4th.
Cool.
Can I ask a quick question? So sorry. I was wondering if our company, I'm new to Tableau, and so I was wondering if our company gives us a certain version, like a later version than this one, do we have to update the application itself, or do we have to ask our company for like a later version of Tableau?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'll go ahead and give you my opinion, right? So most organizations, I don't know if you have Tableau Server or Tableau Online. I don't know what version of Tableau you're on, but most organizations are going to be on probably a 3-month or 6-month lag of the most recent version of Tableau, right? So let's say that 2022.1 comes out here in February. Most organizations will then upgrade to 21.4. And so let's say their server's 21.4. Then what they'll probably do is reach out to you and allow you to either go download 21.4 yourself, or they may push the new version directly to your laptop, depending on how big your organization is and how their IT group works. There are cases of where you may have admin rights on your computer. You can go download 21.4 desktop to your laptop, but if the version of your Tableau server is 21.3 or 21.2, you're going to lose whatever you publish with. And if you're using 21.4 features, well, I guess we haven't gone any, but let's say if you're using desktop features that aren't in a 21.2 version of desktop, then you're going to lose that on the server, is where I'm going with that. Hoping that answers your question.
Yeah, I think we have both, and it matches, like both of them are 0.4. So thank you for that.
Yeah. What organization do you work with? Okay. Was that Manisha?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
I have an activity issue.
I'm sorry, what organization?
I work for the Federal Reserve.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so the Fed has, by the way, my brother-in-law works for the Fed too, so Very cool. Yeah. It's cool. They're on the most recent version. So good for them.
Right.
Okay, so I'm taking up a lot of time here. So let's go through these pretty quickly. So accelerators, very cool new concept. I mean, they've always had sample workbooks on previous versions of Tableau server, but now they call them accelerators. And so notice they have Salesforce, Market 2, Oracle, Eloqua, and then ServiceNow. So basically, let's say that you have Salesforce CRM there at your organization. They have other versions, right? This is just one they were promoting, but actually I like this one more. So let's say I want to use this workbook. I can actually sign into Salesforce and start connecting my data directly to this workbook. Now, I don't have a Salesforce CRM, access to a Salesforce CRM. So I don't know what the next steps are after you click sign into Salesforce, but you can also use sample data, which is cool. Because I actually downloaded this workbook using sample data. It should download here in a second. Maybe not. But once I downloaded it, I was able to reverse engineer it. And whoever created this workbook, I swear is like a twin of mine, because a lot of the calculations are exactly the same. A lot of the layouts the same. They're doing some tricky things in here with some of the axes that they're putting in a false axis here so that it actually expands the distance between my last bar and where my visualization ends. And I want to figure out who created this, because they use a lot of the same techniques I do. But you can actually go down there, download it, use sample data, maybe switch in your data and make a few changes to it. But I think the accelerators are definitely going to benefit the community a lot of users. Any questions on that? Okay. Tableau Exchange. So yeah, so remember that they have Tableau extensions. Now it's rebranded as Tableau Exchange. Again, pretty cool. You can go in there. I don't think I have access to Tableau Exchange. Maybe I do. See if I can show you real quick. Explore. I don't remember how to get there, but you can go in there. Here it is. I don't have access to Exchange, but oh yes, you have to have, I think. Anyways, a bunch of cool features, Tableau Exchange, but it used to be Tableau extensions.
Extensions was on your settings page.
Was it? There
Yeah,
it is.
right there.
Gotcha. But this isn't what I was expecting. I think this is just which extensions I can actually whitelist to my site.
Yeah, so Exchange is going to be like kind of like a marketplace for all the extensions that are out there. You know, just a brief description of what they do, who created them, that sort of thing. So you know who the developer is and what can be whitelisted. I think that's the intention of Exchange, right? It's just a portal for extensions.
Yes, and I think the reason why we can't see this is when I actually did some extra research, you have to have the data management add-on to your Tableau instance in order to get this page. That's
Yeah,
why
makes
I don't
sense.
see it here, is because I don't have, this is just a developer site. And that's why I can't find it. Okay. So replay animations, pretty cool. It's a nice new feature. Basically, if you've ever used animations, when you filter on something, you'll see Keith move up here. You'll see Tamara move down here, depending on the speed of that animation. So same thing with Profit. You'll see things shift around after you filter up here, for instance. Now, instead of having to undo it and then do it again, you just hit the replay button. So they have it in Tableau Desktop, which is up here. You can also see that right down here, I have a replay button. So let's see if we can demo that. Actually, let's go to let's see if we can actually demo it. Get this out of the way. Here it is. So if I click Texas, you'll see I have an animation. You'll see how things moved around. I can actually come in here and say, hey, I want that half the speed replay. Right, and you can just keep replaying it. Cool little button. Yeah, so have at it. All right, and then let's go to the next one. Oops, it jumped me. All right, so that's all I had for new features. Again, the ability to edit, publish data sources via the server, copy and paste, your accelerators and Tableau Exchange, as well as the animation replay. Any questions? All right.
I have a general question.
Sure.
If you add a button and then you click on it and then you get a pop-up box of data, let's say, can you move that pop-up box?
Are you referring to like a configuration menu like Joey just had, or is it more like?
Are you talking about the hide button? Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I have to look at my. I got it to work, but then I can't move the box that pops up.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what you're talking about is if you have, like, this is a horizontal container. Let's say you have a horizontal container like this, right? So let's go select it. And let's say that I have a viz in here, or some sort of GIF in here, or some sort of how-to in here, right? Like a text box that tells you how to read the dashboard. What you can do is I want to add a button here to show or hide. And this is like hold down Alt and click it. It hides everything that was in that container, right? I think what you're saying is if you come in here, hold down Alt, click it open, you want to actually select this, you want to float it, and you want to actually position it someplace and then change the size of it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
is
you just have to
still-
float it and make sure you're actually, you can't change the size of this. You have to actually select the whole container and then change the size of it.
okay.
And then I can move this up here someplace. Right, and so now I open, I close it, open, close it.
Okay, nice.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. All right. Let's go ahead, Jared. It
All right, let me
is your
share my screen
turn.
real quick.
You stop sharing.
All right, hold on. You can see my screen here. Right, you see the online page?
Yeah, so hey, can you get a little bit closer to your mic, or maybe?
Oh, can you hear me? Hello? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah, we got you.
All right. So we're just kind of going over some of the new features for 2021.4 for prep. Sometimes whenever they release, they'll kind of bucket some of the data management stuff in with the new prep stuff, just because like prep conductor and data management are part of the same add-on. But yeah, so for prep builder, some of the new things with this release were they've got a new direct connector to Azure SQL database. So that's pretty helpful. But some of the bigger features that they announced were going to be the virtual connections. So not only did have they done virtual connections as a feature within data management, but they've also released direct connections within prep to those. And what those are, if you haven't used those yet, or maybe you don't have data management, those are essentially they're places where you can go in and set the row level security and things like that, but you can set it across your groups. So maybe you have like a developer group and a C-level group, and then just a standard user group. So you can set different permissions or row level security within those groups, and it's all centralized in one location rather than having to create some conditional calculations within every single workbook to control who can see what rows. So that was one of the newer things they added there. Prep parameters, that was another big release, big feature with this release. And what that is, if I've got Prep Builder open here, so there's this new little button up here now, and you can create parameters similar to how you would in desktop. So you can create numbers, decimal, whole numbers, and then string or Boolean parameters. You can then, once you have a parameter created, you can either use it in your input step. So like here, I'm just connected to a CSV file. If I had kind of like the sample Superstore data set within Tableau, maybe you have your inputs segmented in different folders or by region, so central, south. You could actually use your parameter here in the file path. And so if I wanted to change and say, if I change this to a string and I'll call it central, you could have your list of regional values here, right? And so if I wanted to have the same flow running for a bunch of different processes, and maybe I want them to I don't want to do any sort of unions or anything. I want each to be unique to its region. I can now use this parameter and set it to pull from that specific input. And I could do the same thing for output if I wanted to. I could set it as part of the output location. You can also use these parameters within calculations themselves. So I could create a calculation here if I wanted to and use a parameter there. Or where I've found it to be most useful is if you're connecting to a custom SQL data source where you're writing the code out, you can use these parameters similar to how you would in a stored procedure. And so you can have a couple of variables there. And that way, instead of having to go in and rewrite your code, you can just have some parameters here within your custom SQL. Those are really the most kind of the broadness of the uses for right now. But I'm sure they'll probably expand upon that. For linked tasks, the linked tasks were actually released in 21.3, but what happened was when they released it, if you go to the settings page here as an admin, there's this little checkbox down here, this linked tasks checkbox. And so when they first released it, by default, this was off. And so the only way to actually turn on the linked tasks was if you were an admin. You had to go into your site and make sure those were on to then use them. And the way those work, if you haven't used them yet, is if I go to a prep flow that I have published here, when you go to schedule your tasks or schedule your flows, it gives you the option to just schedule this flow by itself, or there's this linked tasks tab, and you can schedule it in tandem with another flow. And what this is doing is, so I've got Superstore is going to be my first flow here, annual performance is going to be my second flow, and so I can set the conditions. So if this first flow succeeds, then this task will start. But I don't have to go in and set like the refresh timing to make sure that one runs before the other one. I can link them together, and then this one will run. If this one runs successfully, I can tell it to start the next task, or if this one fails, I can tell it to either not run this task or go ahead and run it anyways and just add a data quality warning to the output. So that way, if you've got a workbook connected to the output and somebody goes to look at it, there'll be that little warning that pops up at the top that lets them know whatever message we put in here, maybe that only this data source was only partially updated due to a failure in the first portion of the update. So again, with this release, they just kind of turn that on by default. Another thing that's been added is flow subscriptions. And so if I go back to my settings tab, by default, this is going to be off. So if you don't see a subscriptions tab in your flows, ask your site admin to come in here and check this box to let users receive emails. And so if I go back to that flow, there's this subscriptions tab now, and I can subscribe and tell it that every time this flow runs, I want it to send to either a group or just to me. And what this is doing, because if you own a flow, it will always tell you if it fails, but it doesn't tell you if it succeeds. And based on how much activity you have on your site, flows don't always run at the time you have them scheduled to run. So this just allows you to have that visibility into when it actually is getting refreshed, because it'll only send this email when it actually succeeds running. Now, there is a big difference between Tableau Server and Tableau Online with this feature. And that is, for Tableau Online, I can include a link to the data source. So when it sends this email out, it will just have a hyperlink so I can go and view the data source online. But with Tableau Server, you can actually email a CSV or Excel file of the output from the flow, which is super handy, especially if you if you don't have Alteryx. I know that's something that a lot of people use Alteryx for, is to really clean up and automate some of those raw data files that people need to manage to that level. But unfortunately, you can't do that with Tableau Online. It only works for on-prem right now. But a caveat to that is that Tableau actually doesn't recommend doing that, because you're sending the data off of the Tableau site. So just if you do have server and you're setting up this subscription and you're sending out the data with that attachment, you've got to really make sure it's going to the right people. One other thing that they made an update to here on the homepage, you can see I've got these recents here. That just means I recently looked at these flows. This was not the case with previous versions. You would only see recent workbooks here or recent views. And so it was kind of a hassle. If you use Prep a lot like I do, you'd always have to go to the Explore tab and go back into the folders to find what you were working on. But now they've added that as part of the recents. So that's the main new features with 2021.4. One thing I did want to touch on, just a little tip. So there was a feature that came out with the last release, which was 21.3, which was a new step. And that step is the new rows step right here. And I wanted to touch on it because, kind of like Joey was saying, if you have Tableau Server, you might not really get to utilize these new features until the next release comes out and your deployment catches up to it. This has become one of my favorite steps to use, and it's really useful in what it can do. So at a basic level, it just generates rows based off of the criteria you set in it. So if you see here, I added a step, and I can add new rows based from one field or based off a range from two fields. So let's say I wanted to, and I think I have some data in here. So I've got some sales data in here, right? And so if I wanted to ensure that this data set had one row for every single date between the first date in here and the last date, then I could say I want to use my sale date, and I want to make sure that there is a row for every single day, even if there are no values for that day. And so that way you can use, if you wanted to represent sales, daily sales, you could actually have a point hitting 0 for days where there was no sales. So that's, really why it was created, for purposes like that. What I've found it very useful for is data scaffolding for a number of things. Creating calendar tables to kind of get around some of this, because what I've noticed anyways, because it's a newer step, that sometimes it doesn't always generate the rows the way that I would actually like it to. So you can use this to really create a whole new branch of data without having to use any additional inputs. That's just kind of how I've used it. So like if I wanted to create a calendar table, I want to make sure that every single row is going to be dependent on this calendar table. I can go ahead and create a step here, and I want to say, I want to create a range, right? So I want to have a scaffold start. And what this is going to be is this is going to be the minimum value for the date in my data set. So I want the start to be the minimum value, and I want the end to be the maximum value. And so there's still going to be, since I'm using LODs, there's still going to be a row here for every row that was originally in the data set. So now what I can do is I can keep just these two fields, and I can deduplicate them. So I'm going to use an aggregate step here to deduplicate. And so I'm just going to group by those two fields. And so that's just going to return one row now because it's just grouping them. And so now what I can do is say to generate from values between two fields with my start and my end date. And I want to generate a day for every value in between the start and end date. And let's see, copy from previous row. And of course it decides to break. Let's see. New rows, no fields to display. I wonder why that is happening right now. Well, this usually works. So let's just pretend it worked. That's what I usually use it for stuff like that. One thing that usually comes to mind when you think of the word scaffolding or data scaffolding, there's two things. Some people use it to fill in missing rows, which is kind of the concept behind that new row step, is to fill in missing rows. But then some people use it as a sort of building point for the rest of their data. So if you think about some of these charts like the Sankey charts or the radial charts, pretty much anything that has a curved line in Tableau, you have to use data densification. And that usually means you have to go in and either create bins in your worksheet, or you have to create an Excel sheet that has however many values that you're trying to densify. But I've also used this step to do some of that within here without actually having to create another input. So again, if I kind of do the same thing and say scaffold start, usually when you do data densification, there will be about points from 1 to 100. So I'll just start with 1, and then my endpoint will be 100. Again, I'll keep only these two fields. I'll deduplicate them by just grouping them. So now I've only got one row. That one row has a value of 1 and 100. Now, when you're using the new rows step with integer values, you can only use the option where it says to generate values from one field. So since I'm using integers here, I've got to pivot them into one column. So I'll just use a wildcard here on the word scaffold. So now I've got one column with a 1 and a 100. And so now I can add my new rows step, values from one field. I'll use my scaffold. And so now I've got 100 rows here. And so what I could do now with this is join this back to, I could add my dummy field here, or my join field, add a 1 here with my main data table, could add a join field and a 1. And so now if I join these two together, now I've densified my data. And again, I didn't have to create any additional input here. I was able to generate that from my input just by kind of creating some calculations and making the new row step dependent on that. And it's very useful. I actually used it earlier. I created a rain cloud plot, and you can see here, this is where I generated my scaffold. So I've got my start and end values 1 to 99, deduplicated, pivoted them into one column, generated my rows, and then joined that back to densify my data to create a rain cloud plot. So I use it all the time. I use it for calendar tables. I use it to create snapshots. That's another useful application for it. If you're trying to kind of figure out what like if you're looking at tickets, for example, like customer service tickets, and you've only got a couple of dates to work with, and you're trying to figure out what the status of that ticket was on a particular day, you can use this to fill in those gaps between the missing dates to see and evaluate what that status was on that missing date. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I touched on that. Super useful. And that's really all I got on the prep side.
I have a quick question. If
Yeah.
you're trying to do trend charts and you're trying to capture that historical data because it changes, is that one way to utilize this?
Yeah, and so I mean, you'll have to do some additional work. What I've kind of done is basically set, like if you've got a status field, right, or what I've usually done is based on, like, if I've got an open date and a complete date, I fill in the dates in between and basically say for every date that wasn't this complete date, then it was open. Or if you've got like status timestamps or change timestamps, but that change table, it only records when there is a change. You can fill in all of those missing dates in between those changes and kind of say, if the date is less than this one, then it was still the prior status, and kind of that way you can kind of get a trend of those statuses and how many of whatever you're evaluating was in each status bucket on a particular day.
Yeah, something like that. Somehow on a weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah, and you can when you generate those rows, it lets you, if you're doing dates instead of the integer, it lets you specify if you want to generate the rows in increments of day, week, or month.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, no, Jared, really appreciate you demonstrating these new features. I want to real quick discuss this one. Yeah, so, scaffolding or data densification, it's very important. There's nothing worse than having a missing date in your data source, because it'll potentially screw up a calculation, or sometimes your charts will just look funny. So to have the ability to go back and fill in the gaps with this, new row features, very cool. Do something similar in SQL. I'll use some sort of system calendar to fill in the gaps, right? Or to go back, just like Stephen mentioned, if you needed to go back and take, daily snapshots or monthly snapshots and fill in the gaps. So very similar technique here. So really appreciate you showing that. Also, I want to go back to, we'll share this. It's being recorded and we'll share it via LinkedIn. So real quick, going back to the ability to link flows, it's my biggest pet peeve right now with Alteryx is you can hack a few different ways with using conditional runners to I guess, link workflows, right? But this is something that I wish I had in Alteryx, is the ability to link workflows that as soon as this one's finished, then kicks off, a second flow. You always have those timing issues. If you say, hey, this usually takes 5 minutes, I'll kick it off at 9, I'll kick this other one off at 9:15. Well, what happens if you're having issues, with the database and things are slowed down that day and there's a lag, and yeah, it can screw a lot of things up. So this is a really cool feature.
Yep.
All right. Are there any more questions? I think I saw a couple of things come through the chat. Yes, it'll be recorded, and we will share it on LinkedIn. So make sure to join our LinkedIn group, the Real North Texas Tableau user group. And then thinking could build something Jared mentioned for surge staffing. Cool. I don't know what surge staffing is, but I don't know, Kimberly, if you want to jump on and explain what surge staffing is, or.
Well, it's sort of, I do data verification for Cady Navy Relief. So depending on how intense disaster is, we go from a smaller surge staffing for our rescue teams or a larger one when we know what we've got to wrap our arms around.
Cool. Appreciate the context there. Any more questions for Jared? All right. Tim, you're up. Tip of the month. Teach us something new.
All right. And I'll try to keep it brief here so we can all go out and enjoy the beautiful weather. But I will share my screen. Make sure I'm sharing the right one. All right, so before I get started with tip of the month, we'll first confirm you can see my screen. Should be a Tableau workbook.
We got you.
Okay, before I do that, I do want to give a quick shout out. So Tableau announced their featured authors for January 2022 this year. And Jared was among those featured authors. So I just want to give a shout out to Jared. If anyone here is on Tableau Public, right? It's a great place to find inspiration, new techniques, new tips, that sort of thing. So I strongly encourage you to go out, follow some of these folks. They're producing some great work in the public space. And who knows, it might just spark some inspiration kind of in your day-to-day work. So shout out to Jared. What I wanted to show y'all is a tip involving muting a dashboard selection. So this is more of like a user experience tip as opposed to efficiency tip. But there's been occasions where developers and or end users will come up to me and say, hey, when I select on, any certain category or subcategory or what have you, it highlights what I've selected, but I don't want to de-highlight or de-emphasize the data that I haven't selected. So you see there like the natural kind of default out of the box functionality is that Tableau is going to basically hide, right, anything you didn't select. And that works for some users, but there's others that come to me and say, no, I don't really want that. Can we get rid of that? And it's surprisingly not as easy as you might think. Now, the solution isn't difficult by any means, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So what we essentially have to do is create a dashboard action that leads to nowhere. What I'm going to do to create that action is I'm going to create two calculated fields. One's going to be 1. It's literally a 1, and one will be 0. Oh, just show you that calculated field. It'll literally be a 0. And I'm going to take those, I'm going to use those two calculated fields in my filter action. So I'm going to drag those onto detail for now. I missed one, sorry, let's do this. What just happened there? 1 and 0. I'm going to make them a dimension. This part is important. You, of course, don't want to create a dashboard action to an aggregate a sum. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those two fields that essentially do nothing, and I'm going to tell Tableau to filter by those fields. So I'm going to create an action, filter action. There we go. I don't want to go a little slow. I'm going to let it generate from sheet 1 on a select. And I want the target sheet to be sheet 1 as well, because that's where I want the highlight to be removed. And, let's keep all filters. That's, clearing the action isn't important for this particular tip. I'm going to use the 1 and the 0 as my source and target field. Hit OK. Hit OK. Now what's going to happen? Of course, it broke. Sorry, beauty of the live demo here. The issue. And it is not. Sorry, let me back up for just a moment. What I'll do is actually refer to let me go grab the workbook from our Tableau online. Sorry, 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. I had it working right before we had to present, and now it's not. Let's do this. Dashboard actions. Nice select. First one. All right. There we go. Let me put that one other action back in and we'll be in business. So, sorry about that. Now, as you select different years, different categories, different subcategories, you can see it's filtering on the right. Now, the downside of removing that, that selection highlight is you might not know what you've clicked on. So I'll usually just throw a title in there so a user can see exactly what they've selected, maybe even the date range they've selected it for. But like I said, this is more of a user experience thing. I've had folks specifically ask to remove that highlighting, and using that 1-0 essentially filter action on sheet 1 is how you might do something like that.
Very cool, Tim. Hey, so duplicate this dashboard.
Yeah.
And then, well, yeah, shoot. Go ahead and remove all your dashboard filters that you just created, all your dashboard actions.
Okay. Do you have a different method in mind?
No, I just wanted to go back and look at it the original way, right? So just remove all those and just.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, let's get rid of all of them then. So yeah, the original is, right, you have this blue box, right? That's basically highlighted everything within furniture.
Yeah, so go ahead and click the filter funnel on that. Yeah.
Nope, I lost it.
So the original, so at first I was having a problem understanding. So the original problem is someone comes in here and they're going to use this left viz as a filter. And
That's what-
let's say you select technology or year, it's going to filter the viz on the right, which is what we want. It's just they don't want things highlighted and filter on the left. So you built a workaround that says, okay, if I do click on off supplies, I want to mute that dashboard selection at highlighting. And but I still want the functionality on the right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe I should have explained that a little better up front, but that's exactly it. Yeah, they
No,
just
I definitely have run into that issue a lot, and I'll definitely try this technique. Yeah.
yeah. So think of that. I guess the best way I've explained it to some folks is that dashboard action that you create using 0 and 1 is essentially like a circular cell reference, just in dashboard action form, right in Tableau. It doesn't do anything or go anywhere, but it removes the filter because it thinks there's an action happening in the background. So like I said, strangely enough, I've had this request multiple times. So I figured it was probably worth putting some thought behind with how to execute it.
Cool. So I did learn something new.
There you go. I will stop sharing here, and I think we're good to wrap it up.
Yeah, so let's go back to the presentation here real quick, and we will discuss. Oh no, took me all the way back to the beginning. All right, so yeah, so are there any questions before we discuss, opportunities? Nobody, everybody's good with all the content today.
There was one job opening shared in the chat earlier. I can I'll repost it in the chat just so it's kind of at the bottom of the screen there. But we did have one share a LinkedIn job posting from earlier.
Gotcha. Cool. Do we know who shared that?
Are they still here? Is it Reza?
Reza.
Uh,
Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and promote that link on our LinkedIn page. Yeah, so if you guys are hiring, or if you are open to an opportunity, reach out to, myself, Tim, Brandy, Jared directly if you want to keep it confidential, and we'll see what we can do with that. And if you're hiring, please feel free to post any job opportunity on our LinkedIn channel. All right.
And so again, just to speak to kind of the plan for the rest of the year, Joey, February, are we intending to get together in person? Or are we going to try virtual? Is there anything we want to share?
So yeah, that's a great question. Our next meeting is March 9th.
Okay.
Which is a Wednesday. Our intent is to meet the first or second Wednesday of each month. We are hoping to meet in person at WeWork Legacy North at 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, March 9th. The content of the meeting has not been determined yet. You guys feel free to message us if you guys have any suggestions.
We did have a question here on whether we're going to try to do hybrid going forward. I think that's the intention, is we're going to try to do a Zoom with our in-person events. We'll see how it goes, right? There have been a couple throughout the Tableau community that have tried to, different degrees of success. So short answer is yes, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and just to add a few things to that, there's a lot of benefits to having the hybrid meetings, right? If you're there locally within 15, 20 minutes, I'd love to have you, right? And then we can, go downstairs and have a beer or two afterwards for about an hour. If you can't get there, I think it's an opportunity. Dallas is so big. I definitely want to give an opportunity for others to join, if you're, over by the airport, or if you're downtown and you just can't get to the Shops of Legacy, then definitely the hybrid. For me, the hybrid is a better way to do it. And of course, we always have the COVID concerns. We don't know what's down the road. And if you just have, personally, you just don't feel comfortable, then definitely want to leave the opportunity for you to join and interact with us via virtually. Also, we can then, if it's virtual, we can also have presenters outside of our DFW actually present, someone who wanted to present from Chicago or wherever, right? Remote. So a lot of benefits to the hybrid.
And to that point, if anyone here at the moment is interested in presenting, feel free to give us a shout.
Absolutely. All right, there's a few more things in the chat here. Okay, so yeah, join our LinkedIn page, the Real North Texas Tableau User Group. Follow at North Texas Tug if you're on Twitter. We have an hour before the USA men's national team plays El Salvador, or is it, El Salvador tonight? Or is it Honduras? I don't know, one of those. So let's hopefully get a win.
Sure.
All right, talk to you guys later. Thank you.